What's up, y'all? This is Michael Saddekni from the Birmingham Institute of Jazz. Today I'm going to talk about the written solo that I did over Fly Me to the Moon. We're going to analyze a few of the techniques that I used while writing this solo, and hopefully you get something out of it. The first technique that I used is using a diminished arpeggio over a dominant chord. So, if you arpeggiate on a dominant chord, 1, 3, 5, 7, flat 9, take out the root, and there's your diminished arpeggio. So the first place that I used this was in the pickup to the first bar of the A section. Right there on the E7 flat 9 chord, I do this, resolving to the fifth of the next chord. The next spot that I use the diminished chord, right there on the third bar of the A section. So I have this time starting on the third of the chord, arpeggiating to the flat 9, which resolves down to the fifth of the next chord. In bar 8 of the first A section, there we have it again, this time descending the diminished, starting on the flat 9. So I'm going to start a little bit before it. This time going down to the third, resolving to the root of the next chord. The next part that I use it is bar 4 of the B section. Right there on that A7 chord going to D minor, same old thing. On bar 8 of the B section, I do it once again. This time resolving upwards and landing on the first note of the melody. That's where I start to quote the melody in the solo, and it resolves to the third of the chord. One more place that I did it was in bar 7 of the second A section. So this time doing a little bit more of a moving up and down type of motion, not necessarily doing the whole thing up or down. Resolving to the third of the chord. The next motive that I used is quoting the melody. So using the melody during your solo is always going to be a powerful tool, gets people engaged, and sort of lets everyone know, I know what I'm doing here. So when I got to the second A section and I resolved to the first note of the melody, I played the melody with a little bit of embellishment. So the original melody sounds like this. I added a few more things to it, quoting it like this. Using that diminished idea that I talked about before, sort of to get out of quoting the melody and back into more soloistic ideas. The last compositional idea that I want to talk about is using a motive. So if you take some rhythmic or melodic idea and move it around through the changes, this can also be a powerful tool. In bar 4 of the A section, I resolve on the fifth of the chord and do this. That's on the C major chord, and the very next chord being an F major chord, I just did the same exact thing, started on the fifth of the chord, and then continued on. The next place that I used it was in the first and second bar of the B section. I start on the D minor chord going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 3, 2, 1. Then did the same intervals down a half step, resolving to the root of the next chord. So D minor, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 3, 2, 1, and even though the next chord is a G7 chord, playing a D flat minor is a tritone substitution and also creates a really cool situation where the roots are going down half steps to get to the 1 chord. So you get this nice resolution. The next place I used the motive was in bar 6 and 7 of the B section. I resolve to the third of the G dominant chord and play this. Some of you might have heard this before if you listen to Charlie Parker. So I took the same idea on the third of the next chord and played the same exact lick. On bar 8 of the second A section, I also use a motive here. Now, even though the intervals aren't the same on these chords, the idea is still the same, being that the rhythm is similar and the direction of the notes is similar. So it still works. One other motive that I use, you might have heard this a couple times in the solo, This is also a very common bebop lick. It occurs every now and then. I used this in bar 3 of the second A section while quoting the melody. That was the first time I used it. The second time it came back in the second bar of the final section of the tune. And then in bar 4, just a couple bars later. And it resolves to the root of the next chord. So hopefully some of these things were useful, and we're going to play the solo again so that you can hear some of these things in context of the full solo, and I hope you got something out of it. Thanks, y'all!